It's Christmas Eve, 1945, and in just a few hours, Santa Claus is gonna pay a visit to the Sodder family home here in Fayetteville, West Virginia. But this year, Santa won't be bringing any presents. He'll be bringing death. Join me today as we look at one of the most evil crimes in history. And remember, folks, this one's not gonna be pretty. So viewer discretion is advised. At 10:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, George Sodder is sitting alone in his living room reading a newspaper. His wife, Jenny, is downstairs in the basement laundry room while their 10 children are spread out around the house playing games and generally having fun. Their oldest son, Tommy, is in his room, which he shares with his twin sister, Jenny June, finishing up some last-minute homework so he can enjoy a bit of Christmas vacation. Meanwhile, downstairs, 8-year-old Louis is building a model airplane, while 6-year-old Betty is doing a bit of arts and crafts. 4-year-old Sylvia and 2-year-old Catherine are watching some cartoons on the television, while baby Albert is being looked after by 12-year-old Mary. Then suddenly, a fire breaks out, although nobody knows where or how. Soon, the entire house is engulfed in flames and the children begin to scream. Seeing the danger they're all in, both George and Jenny come running upstairs from downstairs. George grabs a blanket in an attempt to use it as a parachute so he can jump from a window and escape the flames. But when he looks outside, he sees that it's 2 stories up. There's no way he can possibly make that jump. Suddenly, he hears a voice which seems to come from inside his head saying, "Don't try it." So instead, he goes back inside to try and get the kids out. He manages to grab 7-year-old Sylvia and 2-year-old Catherine, but when he goes into the other children's bedrooms, they're nowhere to be seen. Rushing back downstairs, he finds that the front door has been ripped off its hinges and the hallway leading outside is blocked by fire. Unable to get out that way, he runs to a window and screams for help. As flames begin to engulf him and his daughters, he wakes up. In the middle of the night, covered in soot and lying next to a pile of rubble. It turns out that the fire started in the basement and quickly spread to the rest of the house. The intense heat and strong winds blew the roof off the house and the whole structure collapsed. But although 5 children are missing, no remains are ever found. George and Jenny are beside themselves with grief, but in the midst of their sorrow, there are some strange things they can't quite explain. When firefighters arrived at the scene, they discovered that both the wall and the window of the children's bedroom were completely intact, yet the children were nowhere to be seen. The same thing had happened with 7-year-old Sylvia and 2-year-old Catherine. They simply vanished without a trace. Another curious detail is that the telephone wires leading into the house had been cut, implying that whoever did it wanted to prevent anyone from calling the fire department. Also, when police arrived, they noticed that the ladder that led to the 2nd floor was missing. This was odd because normally the family kept it propped against the house. Moreover, an investigation revealed that the house had faulty wiring, but this could have caused the fire because the power had been turned off at the breaker box. So now everyone is asking the same question. How did the children die and where are their bodies? Well, as it turns out, there are actually more questions than answers. See, everybody assumed that the fire had killed the 5 children, but there was never any evidence to confirm this. Sure, the fire was intense and took place in a wooden house, but it didn't burn particularly long. Also, according to witnesses, the wind that fanned the flames died down after only about 10 minutes, which allowed the fire department to gain control of the blaze much faster. This leads many people to believe that the children may have actually survived the fire, but where would they have gone? Well, let's ask some more questions. You see, the twins shared a bedroom, yet somehow Tommy was able to escape. If the fire started in the basement, then why did the twins, who were on the 2nd floor, seem to be the only ones who got out? What's more, Louis's model airplane was still sitting on the table as if he suddenly stopped playing with it and ran away. There were also no signs of forced entry anywhere in the house. All of this suggests that whatever caused the fire may have scared the children so badly that they fled in terror, but if that's true, then where are they now? After the fire, George became increasingly convinced that his children had been kidnapped. In fact, he even began receiving anonymous letters telling him exactly that. But there was another theory gaining traction in the community, one that George hated even more than the first. You see, George was known in the area for being a bit of an eccentric. A devout Catholic and vocal opponent of the United Auto Workers Union, he believed that the government was secretly controlled by communists. He even went as far as writing a letter to the editor of the local newspaper detailing his concerns, which resulted in him becoming something of a local celebrity. But he was also a vocal critic of both Hitler and Stalin, but perhaps more importantly, he was also a vocal supporter of Benito Mussolini. Mussolini had been kicked out of office and executed in 1945, but George was convinced that he had escaped. In fact, he was so sure of this that he told anybody who would listen that the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby was actually a communist plot to discredit Mussolini, who at the time was still believed to be alive and living in hiding. While most people thought this was ridiculous, to say the least, others saw it as nothing more than the ramblings of a madman. One such person was J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, who suspected that George had connections to Italian fascists. As a result, when the Sodder home mysteriously burned to the ground and 5 of George's children disappeared, he jumped at the chance to tie them together. Although there was absolutely no evidence that George had anything to do with his children's disappearance, Hoover wanted to investigate his political ties anyway. Unfortunately for George, he was already a suspect in the eyes of the law. But this wasn't the only sinister theory surrounding the case. Another was that the fire had been started by none other than Jenny herself. After all, she stood to collect $20,000 in life insurance for each child. Today, the case remains unsolved and haunting people everywhere. Even the most thorough investigations have failed to uncover new evidence. Plus, despite numerous appeals from George, the state of West Virginia refused to reopen the case. But what do you think really happened to the Sodder children? Do you think they died in the fire, or were they kidnapped? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, check out one of our other creepy mysteries, like the Zodiac Killer.